There we go. Welcome back to the Cover 2 presented by Tigervision. We got these nice little transitions here again. Let's go. It is episode 66. We're executing episode 66.
Good.
As Chancellor Palpatine once said, this is Grayson Mann. I'm Patrick Neal. Yep, there we go. Bang.
Oh.
Right back up there.
So nice you had to see it twice.
Oh yeah, for sure. But we're back after a little bit of a break. We didn't film last week with Thanksgiving, or I don't think the week before, but we're back regardless. So we're back talking NFL. We're back doing what we always do. So Grayson,
So back.
we are indeed back. Is there a storyline, a plot line you are very inclined to start talking about today? Start the show off with?
As I rub my chin, I think about it. I think that a lot of people I think the last 2 weeks we were on the cusp of it before we took a little break. And then the time we missed, everybody was on CJ Stroud and this Houston Texans team. And I think we really hit on it that what they're doing is really remarkable considering they were a mess last year. And so I really paid close attention to the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans, that Sunday 1 o'clock game, because the Patriots and the Giants put on a punt fest in the other window there. So my attention was focused on how this Jags team, which is one of the better in the AFC, matches up against a team like Houston, who's rising up and coming, has some big wins. And I think I came away mostly impressed with both. I thought CJ Stroud played really excellent, as he really has all year. Has his team at 6-5, which you told me in November Houston would be over 500. Crazy.
Yeah.
And then Jacksonville's 8-3. They're right in the mix to potentially be the number 1 seed in the AFC. After getting blasted by San Francisco, they're starting to figure it out again. So, to me, I really came away with this being like, I think both of these two teams could potentially be teams that could make deep playoff runs. And that's crazy to say about Houston. But when you look at what this team has with CJ Stroud, the team, this is the horse that keeps things going. He's the engine of a really, let's say, a lot of people thought, and you've seen the meme of the really crappy house, but the Lamborghini's parked in the side. The house is starting to evolve. It's starting to get built a little. There's a little bit of continuity growing. There's maybe a second floor being installed. The air conditioning's no longer broken.
Yep.
CJ Stroud is making the place better.
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy. Yeah, that's fantastic. I agree wholeheartely with you. I didn't watch a ton of this game, but from what I heard, from the little bit that I did see, yeah, I think both teams played all right. Both these teams are very exciting. The AFC South has quickly turned from the worst division in football to one of the most exciting, one of the most young and exciting. Kind of like if there was an NFL League Pass similar to the NBA. You always hear the NBA people talking about, oh, this is an NBA League Pass team. I think a lot of the AFC South teams are kind of similar. With Houston, with Jacksonville, who is sneakily 8-3.
Yeah.
They've kind of gone under the radar with it because they kind of started all right. But the last few weeks they've been fantastic. With Indianapolis, hopefully Anthony Richardson comes back and plays a full season next year. Titans are kind of figuring it out. But,
yeah, they're kind of a mess at the point.
But, it's the Titans, and they're always going to play you close regardless. They're going to make you, ground and pound. So
hey, the great teams cover. Tennessee does that.
There you go. But, like you were saying, CJ Stroud has just very quickly flipped the switch in Houston. I think a lot of people, I thought they were going to finish last in the division. Now it's probably not going to happen because I think Jacksonville has a game and a half on them now, having beat them. But there's still a slight chance they win the division. Probably, again, not going to happen with the way Jacksonville's been playing recently. But, yeah, CJ Stroud has elevated this room. The combination of him and Tank Dell is one of, honestly, probably the best rookie QB wide receiver duos maybe ever. I'm trying to think of, the elite of the elite QB wide receiver rookie duos. I'll try and find some right now to think about, but
there aren't much because usually the better teams are picking quarterbacks, and so it's kind of what you have to work with. I don't know, but something I did want to add is that this Texans team and CJ Stroud have been so great that it's made, I think, the miserable season in Carolina even more miserable because of all the rumors of Frank Reich wanting C.J. Stroud and there being a battle for ownership with which quarterback was going to pilot their squad for the future. Ends up being Bryce Young in Carolina, C.J. Stroud in Houston, as we know. But it really, as a Texans fan, you have to feel pretty great about what's happened. Even if they don't make the playoffs this year, there's so much hope going into that organization, and there hasn't been any continuity whatsoever, and they're finally going to get some.
Yeah. To go back quickly, I'm on a Reddit page right now, and the ones I see are Jalen Hurts to Jalen Reagor, and Darius Slayton to Daniel Jones, and Tua to Lynn Bowden Jr. I mean, there's a few others, but I thought those were the funniest ones. So, elite company right there. But
elite, yeah, that's
like you were saying. Yeah, we gotta talk about the Carolina situation because it is not great in Carolina right now. I think to say the least. There came out a report yesterday that David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, there was a lot of controversy surrounding did Frank Reich want C.J. Stroud? Who wanted Bryce Young? And he came out and said it was a unanimous decision in the building to select Bryce Young. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if I fully agree with that because I think Frank Reich wanted C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, it's more like I don't fully believe you. It was like let's tone it down here, Carolina, because I think there was a big story when Reich went to C.J. Stroud's pro day that the two were just in sync. Reich was falling in love with it.
The Josh McCown little clip where he was like, we're going to hoop here in Carolina and Charlotte soon. So, yeah, I think...
They're indeed not hooping, neither the Hornets or the Panthers.
No. Well, now Josh McCown, I believe he was let go, so he can go over to Houston and hoop with C.J. Stroud. But, yeah, this situation, I mean, obviously, Frank Reich has probably not done the best of job. Obviously, it hasn't been the best coaching job ever. But, part of being a successful coach is having the necessary team around you to be able to coach that. And I just don't think ownership and management put him in the best position to succeed.
No, I mean, when you looked at this roster, it was very clear from the jump, I think, week one, this team just didn't have enough pieces. Adam Thielen, 33-year-old wide receiver, signed to a mega extension. They're going to be locked in with him for the foreseeable future, and his production is going to continue to decrease, which for a quarterback like Bryce Young that's really young, having that really star number one receiver is so important, and we've seen that, I think, as old as time. Those young wide receivers are such a key value, or a tight end in certain instances. Brock Bowers is going to be super valuable in this year's draft. So I don't know where Carolina goes with this because they don't have a first-round pick to work with anymore because they'd be drafting number one overall and could probably, assumingly they want to stick with Bryce Young, get a guy like Marvin Harrison, who's a game changer on the field as we saw on Saturday in the big house.
Yeah. The wide receiving core there's no separation. There's not any real speed. Like you mentioned, Adam Thielen signed a multi-year contract, which when he kind of, fell off a bit in Minnesota, his last year in Minnesota, to then go and sign him to a multi-year deal, maybe not the best of decisions. Miles Sanders was signed to a decent sized contract. He hasn't panned out well. They still don't have Brian Burns signed to a long-term deal after deciding not to trade him.
I doubt he stays.
And, they traded away DJ Moore, who would probably be a decent amount of help right now. I guess they didn't want to pay him long-term, but again, he's still a proven wide receiver that would help out Bryce Young right now. The defense is kind of eh. And, yeah, Carolina has gone through a lot of head coach hirings and firings in this Tepper era, which it's not great.
It's really, in the media too, is getting, apparently there's some reporters that I've read that'll be asking certain questions and just getting ignored. So just the culture between journalists and journalists in the organization starting to fall apart there. There's a lot of problems that go beyond the football field right now. So, Patrick, let's play the game of if you're the GM. What is the first move or two that you make this offseason?
Well, it's a bit of an issue because, again, no first-round pick. But at that point, it's a sunk cost, and you got to move on from it. the issue with Carolina is they got to hit on their draft picks. They haven't been able to do it recently. They had Jonathan Mingo in, I believe, the second round. He hasn't been, league changing by any means. You have to get an offense installed as well that works with Bryce Young's strengths. And that didn't necessarily happen. He is limited by his size. He can't really throw over the middle of the field. He doesn't have the best arm strength. You want to do, I saw a video, I can't remember where it was. It was probably TikTok, honestly, where it was Theo Ash, actually, if you know about him.
Theo, if you ever watch, you're one of the GOATs in just breaking it down.
But regardless, he mentioned, which I think is a great idea, getting a head coach, bringing in a head coach that is related to Mike McDaniel, because nobody does a better job of elevating the QB, by getting the ball out quick than Mike McDaniel with Tua Tagovailoa.
It's that Shanahan tree.
Exactly, but because Bryce Young, again, small, both height-wise and build-wise, you want to get the ball out of his hands so he isn't taking hits all the time. So basically, manufacture plays where he can get it to his receivers. Again, you got to have a good receiving core too that can make plays in the open field, but get it to them to where they then can make plays yards after the catch. And I think that's where you start. So look, it's a very, very loaded wide receiving class. Maybe you try and draft multiple wide receivers, but again, there's a few other places they probably need to draft as well. O-line hasn't been great. Ike Ekwonu hasn't been the best since he's gotten into the league. So I think right now, if I were them, I would focus on, you got to bring some excitement to Carolina because it's pretty, a lot of bad vibes right now. So that's where I would be.
I think with Brian Burns, it's probably a likely assumption they're not going to get a contract with him again. They got to focus in other areas. I could see them try to trade for a second and a third and trying to potentially not buy their way back into the first, but maybe get a couple high seconds to draft some high quality players. I'd also throw as much money as you can at a guy like T. Higgins. I think someone for Bryce Young to be able to have the confidence to launch the ball down the field with a receiver that can get most of the 50-50 balls. We've seen it countless times with Joe Burrow where he just tosses it up. And that also, not to discredit Burrow, because a lot of that is Burrow placing it in the right spot where only T. Higgins can get that. But Higgins usually comes down with it more than he doesn't.
Yeah, and I would agree with that to an extent. The only thing is, T. Higgins isn't creating separation. And their issue right now in the receiving core is they can't create separation. They don't have anybody who's, quick, fast, can change direction quickly. So T. Higgins is still a fantastic player, and I think he works really well for a lot of teams. If I'm Carolina, I may try and look somewhere else where there's, a guy who's a little bit better at, getting separation, basically. Mm-hmm. But that's just my thought.
Yeah, I see what you mean there. I checked a stat. It was way down the road, a couple weeks ago, and if you could believe it, the Patriots actually have a better margin of separation than the Panthers do.
Wow.
And I was shocked by that. I was like, no way. That's how bad it is in Carolina, because you've seen plenty of tapes with New England where they haven't been able to get anything going. And I think a majority of that was Kendrick Bourne before he went down, so I'm sure the numbers kind of equalized.
Yeah, but you got Demario Douglas as well now, too, so there you go. Although, doesn't he have a concussion right now?
Yeah, he got blasted on a punt return. He will not be playing.
That's not great. But if we want to talk about a little segue here from the team that used to have the number 1 overall pick to the team who might now have the number 1 overall pick.
Ooh.
The Bears. I think they probably have to move on from Justin Fields.
I think so too. And these last 4 to 5 games for Chicago, it's 5. Yes, 5, including the game against the Vikings. And someone put it perfectly on Twitter, and I agreed. These last 6 games are Justin Fields' audition to be the Bears' starting quarterback in 24.
Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, I believe, talked about it as well on the broadcast Monday.
And so far in that game, minus the one drive where he took them down the field to win, which you need to see from him anyways, where he threw a dart to DJ Moore to get them in the right position. He's got to give him credit there. He has not looked the part. So he's going to have to play, and for the Bears, it might be playing them out of a top 10 pick level good to see, because I think when they look at the draft right now, they have 2 top 10 picks The first one's probably going to be the first overall pick. And you got Caleb Williams sitting there with an opportunity to maybe trade back into the top 5 and get a Marvin Harrison or a left tackle from, I think it's Penn State.
Olu Fashanu?
Yeah.
Yep.
Who's a beast, by the way. And you really start to put the puzzle pieces together for a young quarterback once again. I think it's going to have to take a lot for Fields to convince Chicago he's the guy for at least one more year.
Yeah, and like when I say I think the Bears have to move on from Fields, I don't think it's necessarily because Fields can't succeed in the NFL. I think it's more so because, in honesty, they've wasted his rookie contract. And look, he's in his 3rd year right now. He's going to be in his 4th year next year. If you hold on to him, you then have to decide that next year if you want to give him honestly, you have to decide right now if you want to give him a long-term contract. Because if you're keeping him next year, you're probably adding enough pieces through the draft, through free agency, to where you aren't going to have the opportunity to have 2 potentially top 5 picks. Mm-hmm. So you kind of you have to decide now whether you want to move on with Fields or move on to another QB. And I think in a class where you have Caleb Williams, Drake May, there's a few other guys, but those are the 2, main QBs. I think in this class, it's a class to do it because both those guys are fantastic. And look, Fields, yeah, he's shown flashes. He has shown flashes to potentially be, if he can get all the way there, if he can play more in structure, if he can, be better in the pocket, be a better thrower in the pocket, he could be one of the best playmakers in the league. Mm-hmm. With his running ability, besides Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, he's a top 3 running QB in the league. And that provides value. Like, if you send him to a team like Minnesota, you see what Josh Dobbs is doing right now. Josh Dobbs is objectively plays a little bit better in structure, but, if you send him to a team like Minnesota, to Atlanta, where, Desmond Ridder hasn't exactly lit it on fire, but you can use him in the run game. I think he succeeds better there. I think it's just kind of an unfortunate circumstance where both sides will be better off if they split ways.
Do you think there's a scenario where Chicago, since they have that second first round pick, that if they don't necessarily, now this is just throwing it out there, just because I love the chaos scenario.
I want to hear it.
Let's say they use that first overall pick and they go, we cannot pass up on a weapon like Marvin Harrison Jr., especially in this quarterback class, and go, we still have a top 10 pick. Jaden Daniels might be available down the road. They might really love waiting until the end of the first round and trading back and getting more assets and getting a guy maybe like Bo Nix or Michael Penix. Maybe they like Drake May just a little bit more and try to slide back in. Do you see a scenario, or is that just you have Caleb Williams sitting right there and you're crazy not to take him?
Well,
because Marvin Harrison is that good.
Yes, I would agree with that. But the thing is, like, a quarterback on a rookie deal is the most valuable thing in football. Right. And I don't think, first of all, I think if you decide to take like a Marvin Harrison Jr. first, I think a lot of Bears fans will be very confused and potentially, I mean, you can't be angry at Marvin Harrison Jr., but I don't know. It's a tough situation, but I think, you can do like what the Texans did where they go like back to back with C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, but I don't know. I think they're going to move on from Fields. I'm pretty confident with that fact, unless, kind of like you said, he does something fantastic the next few weeks. But I just in a class where I think it's very obviously, at least right now, all the mock drafts are going to come out and everybody's going to have their own take and everything. But at least right now, where it's clearly Drake May and Caleb Williams at the top, I don't know if you can pass up that opportunity.
Yeah, it's such a interesting draft because Harrison is that odd little nugget that drives everything and kind of flips it on its head.
Yeah.
Because he's such a raw talent, and at a place like Ohio State, there's a history of production at the receiver position in the NFL, and he's probably the best we've seen to come out of there.
Sure.
So maybe I think it really depends on how they love Caleb Williams or Drake May in that post, like off the field process in terms of the questions some have of Caleb Williams. Maybe some front office people are asking that, which I think is ridiculous, and it's for another time when we get into the draft conversation. But it is really fascinating because of that second pick Chicago has. If they only had the one, it's got to be Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a thought.
Maybe, but it's also like there's Malik Neighbors in the class who comes from a school who also has a lot of proven wide receiver production. You know, you have Troy Franklin, you have Rome Odunze. It's a very deep wide receiver class, kind of similar to how it's a very deep QB class. I just think it's easier to hit on wide receiver later in the draft than it is on QB.
Yeah.
So, and again, look, they may have 2 top 5 picks, and with that, maybe they trade up and get Marvin Harrison Jr. with their other pick as well. It all just depends where guys are falling, where they end up in the draft, because they could end up with like pick 1 and 7, or like 3 and 5 or whatever. So it kind of just depends.
Because currently you have the Bears holding the Panthers pick. If Arizona Cardinals, where Kyler Murray hasn't played terrible enough to be potentially replaced just yet, especially with the contract he has, and then you have New England, who will absolutely and should be searching for a QB. It's likely to be Drake May at that point. So, yeah, it really feels like Chicago may, especially looking at the rest of the draft board, going, if we let him sit there for any other pick, he might be gone like that.
Yeah, exactly. That was a great conversation about the Bears.
Very enlightening.
Yeah,
and we don't do that much about Chicago.
No. Where else do you want to go across the NFL?
I do want to talk about one more team, and then I would love to hear your CFP Final Four.
Oh, okay.
Just to switch it up a bit.
Okay.
I want to talk about Denver. And I think both of us thought at the beginning of the year, and correct me if I'm wrong, and just speaking the words that you didn't say, we probably both thought Denver wasn't going to be very good this year.
I mean, I didn't think they were going to be great.
Like a little improved with Sean Payton, but still kind of a mess.
Yeah.
I think what they're doing right now is pretty remarkable. 5 straight wins. The offense is slowly starting to figure it out. Russell Wilson's making 1 to 2 plays that are vintage Russ, and the defense has really come along. I know that they beat the Browns, who have Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but I still think the Broncos are 6-5. They're in the heat of the playoff race. Is Denver a playoff team?
I just think the AFC is so loaded that, like a team like the Bills, who are currently 6-6, the Bills are a better team than the Broncos. But, yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, they're on a 5-game win streak. They've been they've done enough to win games, like you said. They beat a Cleveland team who objectively doesn't have their starting QB, but Cleveland has one of the best, if not the best, defense in the league.
They do. They have the best player in the league with Myles Garrett, based on how he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, him or, TJ Watt always, or whoever it may be. But regardless, I just think, look, the AFC West, I mean, I was about to say the AFC West is loaded, and then I held my tongue because the Chargers have not been great. The Raiders have not been great. It's really just been the Chiefs. But the AFC is so loaded. You have Pittsburgh, you have Cleveland, you have the Texans, the Bills, the Colts are even there. It's just, I think it's so loaded for those final 3 spots. I just don't know if Denver is going to be there. Although, like you mentioned, Sean Payton has gotten this offense working a little bit better with Russ. He is better than he was last year, although he's still not to the same levels he was, back in his prime, obviously. But they got this run game working. Javonte Williams has been all right. The defense has looked better than they did, especially against the Dolphins. But
yes,
it's not hard to do that. I just, I think the Broncos will get close. I think they probably finish with a record of like 7-10, 8-9, and just miss.
This is the Broncos, their remaining schedule. And I think this is a very, very doable schedule. So they go on the road to Houston. That's going to be tough. 2 6-5 teams. That might be essentially a wild card game on its own. But Denver also currently has 2 wins over 2 wild card teams. They have wins over Cleveland and Buffalo.
There you go.
Buffalo in a team with their schedule, it's a gauntlet.
It's the hardest remaining schedule in the league.
The Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Chargers, and they're going to beat the Pats, and then they go travel to Miami in January, which
it's tough.
Going to be tough. So I'm thinking, if let's say Denver and Buffalo both finish with 9 or 10 wins, the tiebreaker's obviously going to go to Denver because of those.
This is true.
Those wins that they've been able to produce on this win streak. That's why I think they are a playoff team, specifically because they're going to beat the Chargers twice. Brandon Staley doesn't know his right or left, to be honest, here at this point.
The Chargers are pretty much
The
out
Raiders
of this.
are a mess, and they're going to play New England at home on Christmas Eve. I think right there that's 10 wins, even if you lose to the Broncos and the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, dude. It's just, I would hate to see, objectively, I would just much rather watch the Bills in the playoffs
I know.
than the Broncos. But you make a compelling case. And yeah, the Broncos are going to be there. Sean Payton is a proven head coach. He's going to get the most out of this team. He has gotten a significant amount out of this team. But yeah, I
think at the very least for them to be in this conversation and having this conversation, especially after the mess they've been for the good majority of the last year and a half, it's pretty good. Pretty good job for Sean Payton in game one.
And also, Aaron Rodgers is also designated to come back from IR. So the Jets are 4-7, but whatever he has done to get back this quickly from a torn Achilles is fantastic. And I really do kind of think that he didn't completely tear his Achilles. That's the conspiracy theory.
Did you hear what he said to people like you? We
What
can't say it on this show.
Oh, I missed it.
The first word is go, and the other last word is yourself.
Well, I think it's almost just like a testament to like how quickly he's gotten back. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm being negative, but
I don't know what Ayushka he's currently holding, but this is a crazy run.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. The AFC's loaded. I don't know. I'm just really hoping the Texans get in the playoffs. And besides that, I don't really care too much about who else gets in. I just want to watch C.J. Stroud play some playoff
They gave the list
football.
of QBs that potentially are going to be in the playoffs, and when you get past like Mahomes and Lawrence, I was like...
It's Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is going to be a playoff QB.
Or Lamar, sorry.
Or Dorian Thompson-Robinson / P.J. Walker. It's a little unfortunate. But, yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, not great. Not great.
So, Patrick, to wrap up, let's start yelling at each other. Give me your top 4 in the college football playoff. The top 6 for anyone who missed it last night. Georgia's at 1. Michigan's at 2 after beating Ohio State. Number 3 is the Washington Huskies. They will play Oregon, who is 5 in the Pac-12 championship on Friday. Number 4 is FSU. And number 6 is Ohio State, with Texas at 7 and Bama at 8.
Ooh.
Now, there is a scenario where the committee is going to be up all night, and there's a scenario where they're probably begging for, so the top 4 handles its business. In Oregon, the winner, so here's how I see it, Patrick. I think the winner of the SEC championship, depending on how things go, will be in. I think the obvious locks.
There's a way where they don't.
Yes,
but.
there's some obvious locks. 2 of them, I have no faith in Iowa. Michigan's going to win the Big Ten championship, barring a disaster.
Would love if they lost because it'd be funny.
It would be funny. I still think they're in, though. The winner of the Pac-12 championship will get in outright, just because of the way they've scheduled, how well both teams
Really,
have
you think
looked.
so?
I do. I do think the winner of that that's basically a playoff game.
Even if like Texas wins, Bama wins, and like Washington loses,
I think Oregon's in.
you do.
I do.
Okay.
I think the winner of the Pac-12 is a lock to make it in this year.
Okay. I kind of like that. Some respect for the Pac-12. It's been maybe objectively the best conference, although them or the SEC, regardless. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't given it a lot of thought, but I think, like you said, I think Michigan is definitely in. I think Florida State and Louisville is probably a close game, although I do think Florida State probably wins. So,
do you believe that a 13-0 Florida State should be left out?
I don't. Like, you can't, even though they don't have Jordan Travis, unfortunately, with his leg, I don't think you can leave a 13-0 Florida State team out.
I've seen arguments against it, and I just wanted to like sit here, and I have this whole script ready for you in case you were like, yeah, I think they should, and start pointing my finger at you. The whole narrative of a backup QB somehow ruins the
yeah, there's been so many backup QBs that
Cardell Jones exists. Guys.
Cardell Jones, Tua. I mean, there's so many.
Jalen Hurts got benched in the national championship, and they still won.
It's also like, a massive FU to like every single other player on that team.
Right.
And
Keon Coleman, Jared Verse, Trey Benson, just name a few.
I just don't think you can do that to Florida State. So I think they get in. I kind of feel like a lot of people are picking Oregon to win this game. And you know what? I'll do it too. Oregon gets in. They beat Washington. And then it's probably just, ooh. See, I'm personally rooting for chaos. I'm personally rooting for the committee to have no idea what to do.
You need Texas and Bama to win in that scenario.
Texas wins. Alabama also wins because I hate Georgia so much.
So you have Oregon, Michigan, and Florida State in. You were saying. So you have a Georgia who's lost.
And I think in that case, because Texas wins, Bama wins, and Georgia loses, Texas gets in because they beat Bama.
Dude.
That's what I want to happen.
But are we going to punish Georgia for playing in the SEC championship? That's the problem here. Because I could see that's the scenario I think.
Yes, because in this case, every single team played in their championship game.
I think
it'd be different if it was like Notre Dame.
I think in that scenario, Florida State might be in danger of being left out.
Sure, but again, I don't think you can do that because they're 13-0.
I don't think they would, but it would certainly be a conversation. So you're saying the number one team the top two would be Michigan and Oregon, and then FSU would be 3, and then Texas would be your 4?
Yeah.
That would be a fun playoff.
I'm just kind of rooting for chaos, and objectively, college football playoff, the last college football playoff group of 4 without an SEC team in it would be hilarious.
And the last 2 semifinals. Oh, you already said that. The Florida State-Oregon semifinal matchup would be
it'd be the rematch
of the first time they played 10 years ago.
Yeah. Ohio State had an opportunity to do that.
They did, and they ruined it.
What do you think the Final Four is?
I think Georgia wins on Saturday. As much as I'm like,
they probably do, but I don't want them to. So I'm picking Bama to win.
I think that Alabama presents a unique challenge to Georgia just because of Milroe's ability to run around and make the most mind-boggling plays. We saw him do it so many times in Jordan-Hare against Auburn.
I mean, that was just bad defense by Auburn.
Well, true. But there was also a couple 3rd and 16s and 17s where he was scrambling around and just found a way to make a play. He's fast, too. But I think Georgia wins. I think Michigan holds on and beats Iowa. And I think Oregon and Florida State will win. So I think that's your playoff.
Okay.
Still equally. Now, I could see there being an argument if Texas wins. But with Bama also now lost, which have their best win on their resume kind of in the dumps. But if Texas needs to win and then root for Alabama, because I think that's their way to get in is look at our best opponent that we've beat already. Just won the SEC.
I agree.
So, man, this could be a fun weekend.
It will be, hopefully. It's what I'm going to do all Saturday and Friday because games on Friday as well. But
championship.
Yeah, is there anything else we want to run down before we
I think we've covered it all.
Yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Zach and Connor for producing, as always. Subscribe to Tigervision. Go like all their stuff. Go follow them on Instagram.
We've been popping off on the Instagram.
Yeah, there you go. But yes, like we mentioned, go do all of that stuff. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.